I'm Shotgun Tom Kelly, president of the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters, Hollywood Media Professionals, and we've been honoring people in the entertainment world since 1966. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our archives, and we're going to show you some of the people that we've honored from the past. Now, here's episode number 2 in our series, paying tribute to the amazing Carl Reiner. Let's join television host Tom Bergeron as he talks with Carl about your show of shows and Sid Caesar and performing live on TV. Why don't you sit back and enjoy?
With all of the potentially volatile personalities, and I'm thinking mostly of Sid Caesar here back in the days of your show of shows, a live show every week, like a Broadway opening every week, how good were you and everybody at standing back and relaxing into a problem when you knew that you had to have that show ready to go live?
You know, you never thought of it, and you never thought of it that way, because in the old days, by the way, I started in television 2 years before that. Betty White has she told me about this. She said she's going to get in the Guinness Book of Records for being on television longer than anybody, as a first woman in television. And I realized I was in television in 1947 and 8 in a show called the Maggie McNellis's Crystal Room, the Earl Wrightson Show, and Marilyn Day, who was a singer, called The Fashion Story. That's 1947 and 48. So I'm going to try to get in the Guinness Book of Records. It's the oldest guy still working. That's the point.
Betty White's so pushy, isn't she?
Yeah. Betty White and we were on last night, as a matter of the last night of the show, where she's my enamorata. By the way, Betty White is I call her my wife-in-law. My captain-in-law, because her husband, Alan Ludden, and he worked for a company during the war called the Entertainment Section of the Army, and I was on my way to Iwo Jima as a teletype operator, and we stopped in Hawaii, and I put on a performance for a bunch of GIs at the University of Hawaii. Alan Ludden and Maurice Evans saw me there, and they invited me to come down and be part of the show. And I said, gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'd love to do it, but I go to Iwo Jima. I'm going to someplace. We didn't know it was Iwo Jima. The next morning but they pulled me out like a ball player. They traded me. And the next day I was an entertainer. And it was because Alan Ludden had called a General Richardson. I went around for 1 full year and toured the Pacific, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Palau, entertaining the troops and ending, this is almost like a bad movie, playing for the 3117th Signal Battalion, all my buddies that I was with for 1 year, becoming a teletype operator. And there they were, all of them, and I'm the star of a show performing for them in Iwo Jima. It was like, and it was VJ Day, the day of victory. I mean, it's like a bad movie that here I am, the star of a show with my old buddies there. Isn't that amazing?
It is. So we have Alan Ludden to thank for far more than we realize.
Exactly. That's why I called Betty when she married him later. She's my captain-in-law, and she's also my lover on television.
Very cool. You were starting to mention about you didn't approach your show of shows worrying that much, or am I paraphrasing?
No, we know we had to it was a live show that started at 9 o'clock, was over at 10:30. And if there was, the only thing we worried about was the cuts that were made, because it was live television and not taped, that when the show was long, the things that would get cut were not the dances. You can't say cut a dance while you're in there, cut from there to there. You couldn't, and if it was any of the musical numbers, you'd have to go through all the orchestrations and take out sheets of music. It was easy to go to 4 actions and say, cut from this line to that line. So we were always in our head trying to remember the cuts that were being made. And the memory of that is frightening. I remember one thing saying to Sid every morning, this had nothing to do with the cuts, but we always had one thing in the show that we looked forward to doing. And Sid Caesar, who I consider the greatest comedian that ever lived, ever. Just a couple of memories of him. Yeah, this is one of I really love talking about, because Sid was one of these guys who never went to drama school. He was a saxophone player. But he had in him what Stanislavski written books about called sense memory, how an actor, when he picks up something, it has to have heft if he's doing pantomime. Sid did pantomime better than anybody. I'll give you an example of what he did once, and I never forgot this. I love doing it. We were looking for Sid to do a pantomime piece where he was going to get laughs doing. When he said, open a jar of olives, have trouble opening a jar of olives. And there was Sid struggling to open his jar of olives, and there was nothing there. So we said, forget it, Sid, and go on to something else. We're going to find something else. And all of a sudden, everybody started to laugh. And Sid said, what are you laughing at? And I looked at him and I said, Sid, aren't you aware of what you did? He said, what did I do? What did I do? I said, well, you know, what he had done is when he was doing the pantomime of opening the jar of olives, he was struggling and struggling and struggling, and he opened the jar of olives. And we said, it's not working. He said, oh, what he did then, in his hand, he had a jar and an open thing. He knew it. But he was thinking about something else. And without thinking, he went like this. He screwed the top back on, and he put the olive jar on a table next to his desk. And he was not aware he had done it. Not aware he had done it. By the way, sense memory is giving a thing happen. And he's the only actor in the history of pantomime. When anybody pantomime is smoking a cigarette, they do this. You know, he's the only one who left a space in his lip for the cigarette. When he was smoking a cigarette, he had his fingers open to take the cigarette out and close his lips. Anyway, that was Sid. Oh, yeah. One other memory. Sid made up words, and we were doing once two emissaries from the British Empire going down to some tribal group to make rapprochement with them, and it was a horse racing. It was a horse race, and at the very end was the big joke. But the big joke for me was Sid Sid, by the way, always didn't trust the people that when he got a glass of water to drink on stage in the show, that it would be clean. So he always faked drinking it. He was always worried. But in this thing, the joke was to make a rapprochement between the two countries, we had to drink from a ram's horn. There was a big ram's horn, and in it, this is the thing he put in it. He made up a word. He said, we drink of the rare gucha yucha juice, the gucha yucha juice. And to cement our relationship, we drink the rare gucha yucha juice. You drink first. And so I took the gucha yucha, it was some prune juice, and I drank it. And Sid was always worried about germs and so. And I'll never forget this. He had a gun on the side, and it was a gun that was loaded with a wad, not a real bullet. But he looked into the gucha yucha juice, and he looked up, and he looked at me. He took a gun out, and he shot into the gucha. I mean, I couldn't believe how funny and crazy it was. First of all, I said two things. How did he know it wouldn't explode the thing? And the thing of shooting, whatever was floating in it, he was going to kill it. And then he drank the gucha yucha juice. The funny thing is that another memory is Sid. Oh, God. Yes, this is so sweet. We were playing two barristers in England. He was against the prosecution. I was defending it. And he said, I'll fight you tooth and nail. I told him, Dad, I'll fight you tooth and nail. To win this case? He said, sure, you can, you young fellas. You got all your teeth and nails yet. Anyway, but what we were doing this while playing a game of pool. And this is another one of those moments where Sid had to ad-lib something. He had a pool cue, and he hit a shot, and the ball went caroming. And we had a score thing on, the string of wire where you push a pellet across. Good shot, I would say. And then I did, and then he had another shot where he put the pool cue against the felt, and we had a little crisscross score there where his pool cue would go under the felt, and he would pull the cue up, and it would rip the felt. And I would say, good shot. And of course, the audience would laugh. We'd flap the felt back on. And he did 2 or 3 times, and it was each time he ripped more of the table. Then there was another slit going this way. There's a warp and woof to any kind of cloth. And when he went this way and he went to pull the pool cue out, it didn't rip. It bust the pool cue in half. So now he has in his hand a shillelagh. It doesn't, and I'm saying, good shot. And he's walking around the table. I said, what is he going to do? What is he going to do with the shillelagh?
This is on live television.
Live television. He's walking around with the shillelagh, and he's looking for the next shot. And it becomes a polo mallet. He takes a wind-up, and he swings at a ball, hits the ball goes off the table, hits a wall, and I say, good shot. And I tell you, I laughed so hard. This is the first... one of the worst things you can do on television, but Burl did it all the time, fake laughter, where you turn your back and shake and make believe something broke you up. He hated anybody breaking up on stage. He never broke up on. So what happened, I knew I couldn't break up, but I was laughing so hard internally, I actually bit my lip and drew blood. I said, oh my God, I drew blood. I actually bit my lip and drew blood. That's how funny a man he was.
Thanks for joining us. I can already feel the excitement building for our next Hollywood Media Professional Celebrity Showcase.